today we're going to have a conversation about EV cars, electric vehicles. I know we spoke about it a few weeks ago, and there's obviously a lot of talk about all of this stuff anyway. There's a lot of opinions out there. Everybody seems to be an expert sometimes on the batteries and where they're mined and how much their lifespan is. What was your opinion on it, Al? What was your take on, or what's your feelings at the moment with it all?
What do I know about it? What I know about it is from the little amount of research I've done, the conversations I've had with various people, and I'm getting a sense that obviously it's very new. The technology is very new. We don't know anything about it. And until there's a lot of research done, a lot of use case scenarios, then nobody knows. We don't know yet how it's going to pan out, how it's going to work. And I think everybody's making their promises. Obviously, the petrol companies are still saying that it's not ready. And the electric companies that are making the cars are saying it's absolutely ready and it's perfect and we should all run and buy an electric vehicle. So obviously everybody's putting their opinion out there to sell their product. We need to make a use case test as users to whether it is ready and to whether this is going to work and whether it is the future or not.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I know I'm very much on the side of wanting it to work and wanting an electric car now. Obviously, price is a massive barrier to a lot of this. I guess where you're coming from is that transparency of all parts to this challenge, right? So we've been told different things from different people. I guess it's one of those things where, do we need the transparency around the full package of sustainability? So yes, the electric cars are brilliant to run, and they're cheaper and they're a lot more sustainable in their use as much as possible. But do we need a bit more transparency in terms of the batteries that are being made, or what that life cycle looks like? Because I think that's the one point that people will pick up on. It's the chink in the armour at the moment, isn't it?
I think that's the most important part for the public's opinion to change is if you look online at electric vehicles for sale, even if they're brand new, there's two figures and you get what the range is. That's what the producer is saying that they're able to do. And then there's a reality range. And that's in real life what you get. Why are there two numbers? This is the biggest thing for me is obviously it's marketing. So they're going to put the best out there. This car does 150 miles an hour. Let's all buy it. In reality, it doesn't do 150 miles. It does 150 miles an hour if the wind's behind you and you're going downhill. And the same with the electric vehicle. It'll do 300 miles if you're going downhill with the wind behind you and you don't need the headlights, the heaters, the windscreen wipers. It's like a perfect case scenario. I think once we've got one number and you can make a true comparison and you can do a true calculation, is this car going to get me to work and back every day for the next 5 years or the 10 years, however long the life cycle of an electric vehicle is, that's when people can have more confidence in buying one of these.
Yeah, I know what you mean, 100%. Because there is that element. I know I've got a hybrid, so I haven't been able to do the full electric yet. But yeah, if you put the heating on, the mileage goes down that you've got. But we had this conversation before about range being the big thing for you, and it's one of those questions I think that comes up a lot, and I just don't think practically it's a much enough of a problem that than people make it out to be. They go, it's only got 200-mile range. How often do you drive 200 miles? How often, going to and from work, you might be driving 30 miles at most. Like charging it up overnight at home does the job. I think those scenarios that people seem to highlight are the ones that maybe don't count as much. Like, you're picking one thing out and going, oh, I can't use it because it's only got 200-mile range on the battery. Whereas if you're going up and down the country and you can plan where you're going to stop or which hotel you might be staying at or wherever you're going to end up, you can plan that, and for maybe a slight inconvenience to stay a little bit longer at the services to charge up for the hour. Like, should we halt progress and a clean way of driving for that one occasion 2 or 3 times a year that it might come up? That I think that's where the balance is, and I think we kind of pick one thing out of a whole list of positives and go, yeah, but it can't do that.
I think progress is a really important factor in all of this, and I completely agree with you. We need progress to test it. We need to be able to just use what we've got so far, even if it's not perfect, and adapt and build on that and get better and better. Moore's law, right? Everything's doubling in progression every year, right? So something like that anyway. So 5 years ago, if you bought an electric vehicle, we all know like the Whiz, I don't remember who made the Whiz, but they if you didn't live in central London, they're practically unusable. They only did 40 miles an hour and they only went 10 miles. And now the progress has got, we can go 300, 400 miles on one charge, which is great. There's not many places in the UK you can't get to on that amount of mileage.
I think that's where the transparency comes back in. And again, it's going to come down to the technology and the batteries, and understanding what the real cost of that is. And even, I'd like to think that, from my understanding, obviously there is a negative element to the manufacture of these the batteries with the materials they use and things. But if that's a slight step backwards in some respects, for us to then in 2 years' time leap forward and to develop that technology to a point where it doesn't use them materials or they last for 100 years, we've got to make that progress. We can't keep holding it back on some of the other values, even if it's not perfect straight off the bat. But I think that's where the transparency comes in, because we haven't got that input. We've got the two extremes. We've got, they're terrible, they use too many materials that are bad for the environment, or you've got the other side of the argument, which is, they're brilliant, we need to all use electric. There's not much in the middle to bring those two arguments together, which is the progress that we need to see. Because more people that adopt this, if we can bring the pricing point down, which obviously needs more adoption as well, if we can get the pricing down, the infrastructure up, then it works. And then more money goes into that industry to develop the technology, doubling the capacity every year, halving the price. That for me, that's kind of where we need to find the middle ground. Find the progress point.
Yeah, I think the price of these vehicles is really important. Economics is a massive part of any big change like this. I think it's easy to say, if you have some money behind you and you're just about to buy a new car and you've got the money for it, to go down that EV route. But you've got to consider everybody else as well that doesn't have potentially the cash in the bank to buy, or they're nowhere near needing a new car. They've just bought a new diesel. So that's going to last them for 20, maybe 50 years if they look after it well. So what's to encourage them to waste all of that money on their brand new car, getting rid of it and replacing it for an EV car? Or if they don't have the money available, maybe they've just saved up for their first car and bought their first car for £2,000, they're not nowhere near going to be able to spend 30 grand on a new electric vehicle. The longevity of these vehicles as well is quite short at the moment. The batteries die quite quickly. So a second-hand electric vehicle isn't going to get you into work and back again, potentially. So there's all these figures to consider when you're doing the work working out whether you can afford an electric vehicle. Yeah, celebrities can afford them and they're buying them like there's no tomorrow. But what about the guys at the bottom, the guys that haven't got that much cash?
It's a massive barrier. massive barrier. And again, just going back to your point to challenge that, saying the sort of the second-hand market. Who's to say that the batteries aren't going to last you that long? Do we know? We're not experts on batteries, are we?
But we need that use case scenario. Yeah, we
Yeah.
need that to be tested in the real world, not by a marketing team that works for Tesla.
Exactly that. Or or equally someone like Jeremy Clarkson, who's I don't know his opinions on it, but petrol head is who knows? Who knows? I think it's trying to get a balanced view of all of these things.
Yeah. The battery always seems to be the weak point in these vehicles. And I think with it, the cost, the cost to the environment, digging up the minerals, the reliability of them, the way that they decrease in their capacity over time. I think the battery is the important part. We know how to work motors. We've had electric motors for a very long time, and they work really well. The battery is the big problem. And I think if we can develop a car or consolidate all of the makers to have a universal battery that you can remove from the car, replace and put back in again, just like you can with a petrol car. When the petrol runs out, you fill it back up again and you drive off. So you can pull into a electric battery station, take your empty battery out, put a full one in and drive off. That's going to be a massive leap in what we're trying to achieve, because then the batteries can get updated on their own. As long as they're the same universal shape and size, they can go into old cars, they can go into new cars, and they get better and better. And when they die and run out, they go into landfill, maybe they get recycled, but then the new ones come out and you don't have to replace the whole car.
Yeah, I think convenience is a massive barrier as well, isn't it? For some of those elements. But I say the whole process of that has got to be sustainable. I think it's got to make sure it's zero to wasteland, and just reuse as much as physically possible. It's a tricky one. It's not an easy subject, but I think there needs to be a middle ground to it all. Going back to your point about the sort of the second-hand market, and people trying to access electric vehicles, there's still got to be an element of just using less, stop throwing things away. Keep a car till it can't move anymore. It's such a throwaway society sometimes in these situations. People leasing cars 2 years, giving it back, it goes to somewhere else, then get a new car again. It's like, we don't need new cars. We don't need to keep buying new stuff. Mm-hmm. And I think cars are a massive part of that. Problem.
That's a huge government level issue that needs to be sorted, because there's such a massive industry in building cars, whether they're electric or diesel or petrol, and I think that's not going away. And there may be some legislation in consolidating the battery tech or shape and size so they can all swap. I mean, all those whizzes that are out there now dying in car graveyards because the batteries have died. Imagine if they were compatible with the new Tesla batteries that last for 400 or 500 miles.
Yeah.
If you could put one of those batteries in one of those whiz cars and buy it for a few £1,000s, that would just be a massive take up on EV driving. Every car in London would be one of those whizzes.
Yes. Yeah, there is a company in France, I believe it's France, that have got plans or have started to produce electric car conversion kits. So they've got a number of cars and models that they sort of refit out and make electric. So you can keep your old car, just take the petrol engine out, diesel engine out, whatever it is, drop in an electric kit, and off you go. It's the perfect way to recycle what you're doing. Obviously there's a petrol engine that's going to come out of it, but again, if you're sensible and smart about it, you can reuse that in some other way as well. So the conversion stuff is a really interesting solution to some of these problems, and it might be maybe $4 or $5 to convert your existing car into that. And I'd say I think things like that, where you start having these conversations about what the challenges are, where solutions could be, these are the conversations that spark whoever it might be listening or joining that conversation to change, to think about something and go, let's put that together with that. These people are doing this really cool stuff here. These people are also doing some cool stuff. They work together. Like something special is going to happen there, and we can get that tipping point of electric vehicles really up and running. Get the charging network up to scratch. Get the price point down to to a mass consumer level, and then it will lift off. And then the technology can be reinvested into to improve the batteries even more. Just make everything fully sustainable as quickly as possible.
Yeah, it's not just about convincing people that that's what they want. It's not just about controlling people and pushing them into making that decision through legislation or punishment, but there are still things that need to be fixed. There are still problems that we've got, and I agree that these problems will go away a lot faster if we do start just taking the pain and pushing into it and doing it even though it's not ready, because then we fix them faster, because it's real life problems are acted on much faster than theoretical problems. So I do agree, but it needs to be the right people, the people that can afford it, the people that are happy to do that and test and suffer that little bit. But I don't think it's fair to make people suffer, especially the people at the bottom that can't afford it, to be testers.
Yeah, agreed. So I think to wrap it up, I think we need more transparency from both sides in terms of the true sustainability of where we are now, where it could be in the future, so that we know we're moving towards something more positive, and that it's not just going to be a hidden feature that batteries are never going to be sustainable, because it just undermines it all. So anybody listening to this, would really welcome your opinions on this. I'm sure there's things that we've missed, other elements that need to be considered. Let's start the conversation. Let's find a point where we can all make progress with something like this, and move forward. Thanks for listening. Ciao for now. Yeah.
Nice. That was good convo.
Yeah. Professional.
Yeah, I think it went well.
We're coming for you, Joe Rogan. Keep that in.